Hi, my name is Kimberly White, and I'm majoring in industrial technology. I would like to share my story of perseverance and how I got to Northwest State. I was 7 years old the first time I truly felt not good enough. May 15th, 1997, standing in the courtroom with my entire family, who was there to celebrate my stepdad legally adopting me. I should have been excited, but I felt sad and out of place and couldn't really pinpoint why. I didn't understand why my biological father didn't want to be a part of my life, and I was too young to understand that it had nothing to do with me. He was a drug addict who had his own battles and demons to fight. I wish I could say that questioning my worth was something I grew out of, but that unsteadiness has followed me. My parents are good people, and I was an average student, but it still followed me to my first attempt at college, where I slept off hangovers instead of going to class and dropped out before they could kick me out. It followed me to Oregon, where I dabbled with the same drugs my father had used, and it followed me to New Jersey, where I thought I had finally figured out how to stand on my own 2 feet, but a complicated medical issue pushed me back to the path I was on before. I was 25 when my father died. He was supposedly sober at the time, but a massive heart attack from decades of drug use took his life. It was then that I was face to face with my own mortality. I was already 25 with nothing to show for it. I was living with a friend, jobless and without direction. I never got validation of my worth from him, and now I was out of time. It's hard to grieve someone you don't really know, and I spiraled until I was an anxious and depressed mess. I felt like a screw-up, just like him, and I couldn't pull myself out of it. I intentionally overdosed on my prescription medications and unintentionally showed myself how much I wanted to live after being medically sedated in the CCU and spending time in the psychiatric unit. I left the hospital with confidence and determination to turn my life around. Flash forward to falling in love, getting married, and starting a family. I would love to say that my husband encouraged me to go back to school, and that's why I'm standing here today, but that's not the case. I didn't know when I said my vows that the person that I fell in love with didn't exist, or that he would destroy the confident woman I had worked so hard to become. I didn't know that everything I'd finally figured out about myself would be questioned yet again. The abuse started simple, and it wasn't until 2 months after our 5th anniversary, as his hands were around my throat, screaming that I was the problem, that I was stupid, and that I didn't deserve to live, that I thought of my children and decided that if I lived through the night, I would go to work tomorrow and never come home. I would figure out how to get my children out of that house, and I would do better for them. So I stayed up all night, anxious he would come home while I was asleep and kill all of us. But the sun rose, as it always does, and I dressed for work, my social security card, my ID, and the $500 I had managed to squirrel away in my pocket, and I left. My sister was gracious enough to let me stay with her until I could get into an apartment. And 3 weeks after leaving my home in Michigan, I started my new life in Ohio as a single mother of a 1, 2, and 4-year-old. And life moved very quickly after that. I was working full-time and spending countless hours on the road for medical issues with one of my children. I had to quit my job as 1 surgery became 2, 6 weeks of recovery turned into 16, with months of additional physical therapy. How could I go back to work when my daughter needed me more than ever? Being a mother is my favorite role. I never knew what I wanted to do with my life, but I knew that I wanted to be a mom. I wish I could say that it's enough for me, that being a good mom gives me purpose, and it does. My children are the greatest joys of my life. But after months of being the sole provider for 3 young kids who were completely dependent on me, I needed to figure out who I was outside of being a mother. I needed to find my worth again. I needed a plan to get us into our own house, and it needed to fit into my already very busy schedule. You'd think based on circumstances that going back to school was the obvious choice, and if you know me, you might think it was an easy one. It was anything but. That same unsteadiness that I felt as a young girl, and again at the end of my marriage, jumped on my back with a vengeance. What if I really was stupid and I failed like I did all those years ago? What if I wasn't good enough and everybody knew it? I thought that if I went into school with a good attitude and ambition, that I could fool everybody into thinking that I belonged here. So I set up first semester classes, a full-time schedule that I pretended wasn't daunting, that included a lab physics class that I just knew would be my downfall. I bought my books like it was no big deal, joking and being friendly with the staff while I tried not to think about the contents of said books. I'll skip over the long nights of studying, the frustration when I couldn't quite grasp what I was learning, and the times I cried because I felt like nobody else was struggling, a thought made worse by usually being the only woman in my classes. It's not that those things don't matter because they do, but I'd rather tell you that I aced that daunting physics class. In fact, I finished that semester with a 4.0, an accomplishment I never thought that I could achieve, and one that I'm still incredibly proud of. It was then that I really started to pay attention to my interactions on campus, and I realized that the only person who didn't think I deserved to be here was me. The only person who thought I was dumb was me, and I was the only person who thought that I wasn't good enough. Realizing you're standing in your own way is a tough pill to swallow, but that realization is one of the greatest things that has happened to me. I realized that it didn't matter that my father was a drug addict who didn't love me enough to know me, or that my ex-husband thought I was stupid and would never amount to anything. The friendly, intelligent, hardworking, funny, bubbly personality that I adopted to make myself believe that I belonged here is my own. I am all of those things. Being a student at Northwest State has been an amazing experience. I graduate next month with my degree in industrial technology and will return in the fall to finish my maintenance technician degree. I will be able to give my children a better life, and NSCC has reminded me that I too deserve the beautiful life that I'm creating. I would not be able to go to school full-time while raising 3 children if I didn't receive financial aid. I'm so grateful to the donors who make higher education a possibility, the TRIO team for their constant guidance, and to the many, many people in this room who believed in me when I could not. Thank you for being here tonight, and thank you for hearing my story.